Good morning. This is Sally Morgan, physical therapist, craniosacral therapist, and Tellington T-Touch practitioner for animals and people. This is Tristan. He's a Corgi, and we're here for an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. And once again, the music has died on the other phone. Sometimes it just doesn't charge right. I don't know. It's really old. Pretty soon the music will be on this phone, and then this phone will be replaced with an 11, but that's going to take a couple of months. So anyway, here's Tristan. He's still festive. And I had a few people after my last episode ask, what is Boxing Day? And then people at work and everywhere I've been this week have no idea what Boxing Day is. So I thought we'd do an episode about Boxing Day because it is somewhat relevant to dogs. So traditionally, in British tradition, Boxing Day is the day after Christmas. And it is not about boxing things up. It is actually about giving. And so traditionally what would happen is the servants in the castle would be working all day Christmas Day, because there'd be big parties and stuff going on, and they'd just be exhausted, and they didn't get their own Christmas. So the day after Christmas was their Christmas. And on this day, traditionally, the Lord of the Manor would bring alms to them and also gifts in boxes. And that is how we got Boxing Day. And then there was this fascinating thing about the history of Tudor Christmas on PBS a few days ago. And in that, it gave a little more detail about this tradition, which is that somebody like Henry VIII, who had a huge feast and would have something like beef Wellington, which is wrapped in pastry, because he was the king and he didn't want to get too chubby, well, that went out the window later. He would only eat the very best morsels. And when all of the lords and ladies had feasted, there'd be tremendous amounts of leftovers and very little storage. So what they would do is go out to the peasants and give them the leftovers, which really had been dined upon. It would be the stuff you'd scrape off your plates and off the table. And so often that pastry on the beef Wellington was all that was left of the meat by the time the peasants got it. So that's kind of an interesting thing with beef Wellington too, that you'd have the flavor of the beef and the fat, but none of the actual meat. So Boxing Day has then become, also it was associated with sporting, particularly with horses, because St. Stephen was associated with horses, and it's on St. Stephen's Day. And if you think about the song Good King Wenceslas, on the Feast of Stephen, a guy came wandering about looking for fuel. Well, the poor guy, he needed to heat his house up because he was working his butt off for the Lord the day before. So, hi Jim and James in Maine, where it's probably cold. Anyway, so there was also this idea of horse racing and horse betting associated and gaming in general associated with Boxing Day. So it was a time for people of wealth to share their wealth or their things, food, with others, as lobster was served to prisoners many years ago. Really, on Boxing Day? That's interesting. I don't know. So it's pretty fascinating that this idea of gaming also is associated with charitable giving. And many people in Canada and British countries all around the world have this tradition of Boxing Day being a day where you go to the soup kitchen, give people money, work in a shelter, volunteer in some way, or that's the day you write your checks to all of the organizations that want money from you so that you can get your tax deductions in for this year. So yeah, Danny, you're up there where it's really cold. She's in South Dakota. She is having some incredible snow coming in. Ugh. Anyway, I hope you like cross-country skiing to your car. Unless you have a garage. I have a Corgi hair in my mouth. This guy got a bath, and so he's pretty fluffy and shedding, even though I've taken 5 loads of hair off of him, and he's a little dog. So anyway, that's the tradition of Boxing Day. So one of my prior relatives used to take Boxing Day pretty seriously, and that was the day that she gave the Christmas envelope to the doorman in her building in New York and to the people that worked at her club serving food and making food, and the people at the barn that took care of her horses, and the person that babysat her cats, and anybody that was like technically an employee and not somebody she had a personal relationship with. Boxing Day was her day to give them things and money and, So that's the history of Boxing Day. It is not about putting cats and corgis in boxes, but it is about thinking about those less fortunate and giving what you can. And so that's why we had they're getting a blizzard in South Dakota. Ugh, that's high winds and a lot of snow. So that's why we had the episode about the Rupert, Rescue Rupert, that way I read on Boxing Day, because that's about dogs that are lost and dogs that need sheltering in homes, as so many animals do at this time of year. And there will be more of them. Lobster was considered food for the poor in Maine many years ago. Well, so were crawfish in Louisiana, right? Like those crustaceans, they're a little suspicious. So anyway, Boxing Day is a great day to volunteer or work at your shelter. And a lot of people get puppies for Christmas, sadly, often from puppy mills, and they don't want a puppy. They can't take care of a puppy. They don't have time for the puppy. The puppy's behavior is not what they expected, and so shelters become a little bit full towards the end of January and February. So even if you don't do anything helpful to them in Boxing Day time, you certainly will be needed at the end of the month when these animals all need homes. And the same thing happens with rabbits at Easter, although I think there's been many good activists that have stopped the giving of bunnies and chicks at Easter. Thank heavens. So that's a little history of Boxing Day, and now it is just a day off for a lot of people, which is good. I mean, think about it. If you have worked in, let's say you're a Walmart worker, some big box store, or Amazon, and you had to work like on Christmas Eve right up till the last minute, and then some people have had to go back in Christmas morning or Christmas evening, having Boxing Day as an actual like Labor Day, a day off, would be super nice for people. But it is not a national holiday in this country. And, and if Christmas isn't on a Wednesday, a lot of people do take Boxing Day off anyway, just because they want to spend time with their families, and Christmas can be exhausting and you're not really in a mind space to go back to work the day after. So, do you have anything to say about Boxing Day? He says, no, there was no boxes for me on Boxing Day. So we will be back tomorrow, Sunday, for an episode of Conversations with a Corgi. And then next week, possibly on Wednesday. Oh, Wednesday is New Year's Day. No, I'll be quite busy on New Year's Eve, so New Year's Day will not happen. So probably Thursday morning we'll be back after tomorrow for another episode of Conversations with a Corgi. So happy post-Boxing Day to people, and think about things that you might be able to do to help your shelters out and your breed rescues towards the end of the month. Sometimes just taking in a foster dog can really help a breed rescue, especially if there's purebred puppies floating around towards the end of the month. So that's a great thing to do. Or just supporting people that do that, going over there and feeding all the dogs dinner so they can go out to dinner, giving them a gift certificate so they can go out for dinner. There are some really dedicated Corgi rescue people around here that I try to do anything I can to help them, because they are really wonderful. All right, thanks so much for joining us today. Everybody have a great day. We'll get this other phone charged up again, and hopefully we'll have Corgi music. And I'm actually even thinking about changing the music because, I don't know, we might have some different music. All right, thanks for joining us. Everybody have a great day. Stay warm, Danny, and you guys in Maine.